our passion, really, something that drives us, is we know that we work in what is called a very diluted industry. The word coach, I remember back in Canton, Ohio, good old John Deegan, and man, I have a ton of respect and love for that man. He is quite a unique individual, I can't say enough about him, but I remember him saying in training that he had chosen, at least for a portion of his practice, to move away from using the word coach from a marketing perspective, because it was so watered down, so diluted, that using the word coach or term coach to market his services actually hurt him in his market. And I can totally see where he's coming from. He preferred business advisor, that kind of stuff, right? And we can see that because the market has become diluted with everybody and their dog who wants to get into the coaching arena. People read Chicken Soup for the Soul. They think they can help people, right? And that's a noble thing, but I mean, not everyone has the skill set, the training, nor the ability necessarily to ask the right questions, reflect back, help people plan, and do the phenomenal stuff that we do as business coaches, get into all the other really cool areas of helping a person and their business develop. And one of my passions as being in a diluted industry is putting coaching back into coaching. And we feel that mandate, and it's a self-imposed one, no one's put it on us, but we feel this mandated breakthrough, say we want to be a model, we want to be an example of what coaching looks like. And we're not there yet, we're making mistakes every single day, well at least my team is, but no, I'm making them all. We're making mistakes, we're learning as we go, but building something that people can look at and say, that's the real deal. That's what coaching should look like. That's what it should feel like. That's what the experience should be. And these are the results you should get. In a world that's really foggy, we want to provide clarity, right? Which is what we do as coaches anyway. You might get the impression when you talk to me for any length of time, any of those that have, and I've had the opportunity to meet several of you over the last several days that I hadn't met before, and that's a real honor, a real privilege, but you probably, get the impression that I love coaching. You might feel that from me. You might get that energy off of me. I absolutely love coaching. It's not, as I said on the firm panel yesterday when we sat here answering your questions, and it's not something I do. It's something that's central to who I am. It comes from a deep place within me. This is not a job. This is not a business for me. There's a business aspect to it. I like to tell people I'm a coach and I'm a businessman. And both work very well together. But the coach part of me, it's a calling. I feel it's a deep sense of calling to helping people get unstuck and build the kind of organizations that get them what they want out of life. So coaching is it's a passion of mine. And I'm firmly convinced that we have the best profession in the whole wide world. I think as coaches, we have an opportunity and a calling to work with people in such a way to transform the trajectory of people's lives and their organizations and all the people that are part of those or touched by those organizations, that we are that individual that can come in as one person or as a team and help create a pivot, right, that transforms people's lives and experiences. And many of you have stories. I mean, how many here have been coaching for 2 years or more? Let me see your hands. All right, how long does it take you to come up with a story, Tom, to just call to mind, you don't have to share it, just call to mind a story of transformation? Easily, right? A story where you walked away and said, wow, that was cool. Something just happened here, and I know I was involved, but there was a lot more going on, right? Something happened in the client, an epiphany happened, the penny finally dropped. They took ownership for the first time over that particular issue. They stopped pointing the finger, they stopped playing the blame game. They learned something new, they got really excited about it. They got their energy back and their joy back about their business. They started getting results that they weren't getting before. And now instead of carrying that pressure of making payroll, they're talking about a celebration party for the best year they've ever had. I mean, there's the stories we can think of. And those of you that are new coaches and haven't experienced this yet, I'm going to tell you, the first time it happens, it leaves a dent in your psyche. Because you realize that you are involved in this process of transformation and change, where you are a facilitator of enabling people to achieve what they can't get to on their own. And if they could get there on their own, maybe they will, but it's going to take them an awful lot of time and knocking their head against the brick wall several times before they get there. And you're able to fast track that process, provide the clarity, provide the focus, provide the support, that sounding board. I had one day, I told a couple people this last night, one day last week, 3 coaching sessions back to back. 3 completely different owners, 3 completely different businesses, not even related to each other, and we had 3 completely different agendas for each of those, different agenda for each one of those meetings. And yet every single one of those owners looked at me across the table at one point in that meeting and said, you know what, Eric? I can't talk to anybody else about this stuff, right? And you realize in that moment that you've got a place of sacred trust, that trusted advisor, that you've been invited into something that is bigger than you. And it's that process of change and transformation. And that's really what drives me. I mean, if I was to ask you, and I got to be careful about time here, but just shout them out real quickly. What are the takeaways for your clients from working with you? What are the benefits they receive from working with you? Just one word answer, just shout them out.
Clarity.
Clarity, we hear that one a lot.
Growth.
Keep going.
Confidence.
Life is more than money.
Life is more than money. Yeah.
Control.
Sorry?
Grandchildren.
Grandchildren.
Control.
Control. What else?
Time.
Time.
Belief.
Belief.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
Hope.
What's that worth?
Does that look right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, these are all fantastic, right? We could go on and on, couldn't we? We could just keep going on this stuff. That the benefits that we've seen our clients experience, and in the beginning they may be skeptics, but man, if they really apply themselves, they get won over pretty fast because they begin to experience this stuff and say, wow, this coaching stuff really works, right? What are the benefits for us? What do we get out of coaching?
Clarity.
Fulfillment?
Happiness.
Happiness?
Yeah,
Fulfillment.
that deep calling part that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Legacy.
Legacy?
Energy.
Energy?
Fun.
Fun? Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment?
Don't have to work.
Don't have to work. Oh, I like that. Hey, and let's not kid ourselves. We can make a pretty good living at this, can't we? Right? Provide for our families. I've always defined wealth as the opportunity to spend more time with the people you love doing the things that you love. Wealth gives you opportunities. It gives you options that you don't have otherwise to do the things that you're really passionate about. There are benefits to the client. There are benefits to us. I tell you, coaching can be life-changing, life-altering, both for the coach and the coachee. And I want to tell you a story about the impact of coaching told to me by a person who's very, very dear to me. He's a dear friend. He's a mentor of mine. He's actually from the Houston, Texas area. His name is Jim Harrington. And Jim is, I actually consider him my spiritual dad. He's more than just a friend. Often when we get on the phone together, he always, I call him dad, and he thinks I'm so bright, he calls me son, right? Just making sure you're still listening. Jim is what I consider and please don't take this the wrong way, there are masterful coaches in this room. I've been sitting back the last couple of days taking notes. I'm saying, man, this is why you think we're doing this because we're like being altruistic, capturing the video notes, because I want to go back and study it and revisit it and make it available to you as well. It's a win-win. Is that okay? Okay. Learning from all of you. Masterful coaches in this room. But in my 25 years of leadership experience, I've never met anyone like Jim. He is, in my opinion, the epitome of a coach. He doesn't call himself that. He doesn't have a business around it. He just is that. He lives it and he breathes it. And I've often said, if I can become half the coach that Jim is, I'll be doing pretty damn good, right? And I aspire to be more like him. Jim tells a story about a man that he coached out of a really tough spot. And it's a story that's always resonated with me because of the many parallels that story has with my own experience and my own journey. And we'll call the man in our story Bob. Is that okay? Just to protect the innocent, call him Bob. Everyone say hi, Bob.
Hi,
Hi, Bob. He's not here. But Jim first met Bob about 10 plus years ago at an event that he was hosting, a training event he was hosting in Houston. And Bob had traveled there to take these 4 or 5 days of training. And over the course of that training, Bob and Jim really hit it off. And they made a really good connection. Jim is just that way. He connects with certain people in a really, really cool way. And he connected that way with Bob. And but because Bob was from a different part of the country, they kept in touch for a little while, right? Several months and a couple of years. And then over time, it's like most long distance things, when you don't see each other and you're both busy, they lost touch. And lost touch actually hadn't connected in about 10 years. And then in the early fall of about 2010, Jim feels a nudge. You know those nudges you get, right? he feels a nudge to send his old friend Bob, that he's in talk to in about 10 years, a note through LinkedIn. How you doing, Bob? Been thinking about you, been on my heart, how are things going? Right? What he didn't know when he sent that note was the condition that Bob was in on the other end. Bob was in pretty rough shape. It was probably the worst part of his life. As a matter of fact, when he received that message, he was too embarrassed to respond because of where he found himself in life. Life had dealt him a hard deck. Things had changed dramatically since he had last connected with Jim. And responding would be an admission of, in his mind, failure. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And so he didn't respond to the email. He wanted to delete the email because every day, as Bob tells the story, he says that he wanted to delete the email every day because every time he looked at it, it was a reminder of him that he wasn't where he wanted to be and that he was too embarrassed to respond to his dear old friend. But he didn't want to delete it because it was like the one thread of hope that he had, because he knew that Jim had a way of inspiring hope and getting him back on track and doing those kinds of things. Things had gone really bad for Bob. Let me give you a bit of context. What had happened is, by the time you received that email, Bob was in the middle of a marital breakdown. His wife had announced to him that she didn't care for him anymore and that she'd be leaving. So his marriage of nearly 20 years had fallen apart. And with children and all of that, that was a pretty big blow to him. Work front was no better. He was in the middle of, held a key role, an important role in a company that was coming apart at the seams. Both he and his wife worked at that company, so all their income depended on that company surviving. They were under tremendous financial pressure, part of which led to the marital breakdown. Things at work were bad, things at home were bad. This guy was in a really, really tough spot. And then he gets this note. Now, those of you that have coached people through things, personal issues at home, you guys know I've been a pastor. I've worked with people for years going through divorce, separation. When things at home are bad, everything's bad. Is that right? Doesn't matter how well things are going at work. When things are bad at home, things are bad. But he had it going on both fronts. It was pretty tough stuff. But let me backtrack a little bit, because you need to understand a little bit more about Bob's background. And this is where, again, I really resonate with the story because there's a lot of parallels with my own life. Bob had been a pastor at one stage in his life early on. He had felt a call to a church ministry and had started a church at a young age and led it for many, many years. And for the most part, it had been a great experience. He devoted himself 110% to everything he did. He served that congregation. He gave his blood, sweat, and tears to grow the organization and to just serve faithfully and do a good job and make a difference. And by all appearances, he was a successful church leader. I mean, his church grew from just a handful of people to several hundred, and in his market, so to speak, that was pretty cool. There weren't many churches that size. And things were going well, and he served and he gave, and this went on for several years. And near the end of about 10 years, something began to shift inside of Bob that changed the game for him. Any of you that are familiar with church leadership, I don't know, I know we've got people from mixed backgrounds here, so I'm talking about my background. Is that okay? So background, that's my context, where I've come from. Some of you have come from that context. And you know that if you've been in that context, the world of church leadership is not for the faint of heart. It's a very difficult life, very difficult calling, very fulfilling, but also be very, very difficult. And I can echo that. I've experienced it myself. Bob went through a number of things, leadership issues and challenges. He was a young man when he got started. Lots of passion, lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm, not a lot of experience, not a lot of support, made a lot of mistakes. For the most part, they were able to keep moving the thing forward, but the toll that the mistakes were taking were really beginning to affect him in a major way. He was losing his energy, losing his passion. He didn't love what he did anymore. He felt guilty that he didn't love what he did anymore because he felt that somehow that was a fault of his or a failure on his part to, in his faith. He really felt that was a bad deal, that something was wrong with him. He was burnt out. Matter of fact, had to take times. More than one occasion, Bob had to take extended time off, extended leave, what they call extended study leave in that world, which basically means he's burnt out, ready to crash. We better let him rest for a few weeks before we pound him again and throw him back into the grinder, right? It's an interesting world. Great world, but there's an interesting underbelly to it. So Bob was burnt out. He was suffering from depression. He was discouraged. Felt like a failure. And yet everyone around him would look at what he was doing and said, "You're a success. You're doing great. What are you talking about? Why are you so discouraged?" He had lost his why, lost his way, didn't want to be there anymore, yet he felt completely stuck. He had gone into this line of work as a young man. He didn't have a university degree. The only degree to his name was, based around his Bible studies or whatever to become a pastor. Not very transferable in the work world. Hire me, I've got a theology degree. It's not going to go very far. So he felt stuck, didn't think he could do anything else. Needed the income, he had a family to support. So here he is trying to pull it from his toes every single day as he went to work and tried to serve the congregation, but his heart is not there anymore. Do you know any business owners like that? Have you ever had those kinds of conversations where they've lost their why, they've lost their way, they feel stuck, they don't know the way out? That's where Bob was. And he was in really bad shape. This went on for a very long time. He just kept getting more frustrated, emptier. He was running on fumes. Began to grow angry and resentful that he was stuck in this system and couldn't get out, and didn't see a way out. And as a natural outcome of that, as you can imagine, the home life started to suffer. Bob wasn't a bad guy. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. He didn't sleep around. But in this space that he was in, he was checked out a lot of the time. He was either ruminating over what was going on, or he was trying to escape those haunting thoughts and fill his time with other things so he didn't have to think about it. I know no one can relate to that. He was hiding in his work or doing whatever he could to try to just survive, but the impact of that on his home life and his family is growing distance with his wife, distance from his kids. He was just really checked out. He was in bad headspace. And the depression was setting in, it was taking its toll, and he was just really kind of going down this downward spiral. And yet, anyone who knew him, from the outside, from his public self, would have said, "He's doing great." Didn't have any friends, and here's another danger sometimes that can happen in that world is oftentimes you try to become friends with people in your own that you're serving as congregants, and that can be complex and difficult and challenging. And then you make a leadership decision they don't like, and they move on. And Bob had been experienced that several times. He had no close friends, no one to really talk to. So no one really knew this inner world and this inner battle he was fighting, this inner struggle, and assigning him, "Hey, he's doing great. Look at the great work he's doing." But inside, he was really dying pretty quickly in terms of it. His soul felt like it was dying. Jim tells a story. He says he felt more than stuck. He felt divided, torn, guilty that he couldn't shake this off and get back in the game. At home, he became hard to live with. He became irritable. Either he was distant, or he was cold, or he was grouchy. It's just the state of mind that he was in. Add to this the fact that in the middle of all of this, he's in this headspace and this is going on, he's really unhappy, and he loses his dad after a brutal 2.5-year battle with cancer, lung cancer. And he loses his father at a very young age. His dad was just in his 60s. And that was sort of the kicker for Bob. That was like the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. It was like the final thing that all of a sudden now, enough's enough. His faith was rocked, his spirit was crushed, his mind was overwhelmed, and he just needed to get out. And an opportunity presented itself. A local company run by another former church leader approached him and started having conversations with Bob about joining his firm because he had the skill set and that he felt he could really apply himself to. And Bob, after a series of conversations with his wife and everything else, they felt this was a great opportunity and they exited stage left. They saw this as an opportunity, really a blessing from above, so to speak, because it seemed to fit all the right criteria. It was a firm that had great family values. They were committed to helping people. It was out of church life, which was in church leadership life, I should say, which was a big criteria for Bob at this point in stage of his career. And it was a great opportunity for him just to step in and begin to do something different. And for the first several months, it was like honeymoon period. Everything was great. Bob was happy again. He had that gleam in his eye. He had that bounce back in his step. He felt like he could really engage. He loved the work. He loved the people. It was a new environment. And the pressure that had been on him for so many years was off for the first time. That was the first 6 months. Little did Bob know that although he had been given an important role in the company, he was coming into a company that was coming apart at the seams. Through careless decisions and careless leadership by the owner and bad financial management, the company was just falling apart. So now Bob finds himself back into a situation where he's moved his family away from one thing, out of the frying pan into the fire. They're right back into that pressure cooker of, we don't know if we have a job tomorrow. We don't know where the money's going to come from. And trying to keep this company going, Bob is working desperately along with other leaders in the organization to try to keep it afloat, because at this point in the story, Bob has invested a significant amount of money in the company and has family and friends that have done the same. This thing goes down, a lot of people are going to be hurt. He devotes himself and works really, really hard, but nothing can save the company. That is the fall of 2010, when the email comes from Jim to his friend Bob. Hey buddy, been thinking about you. You've been on my heart. How you doing? And that's the email that faced him. Finally, 4 months later, it was January of that following January, so January 2012, that Bob finally responded. Things had gotten so desperate. He was in such a bad place. Felt like his life was coming apart at the seams. His wife's getting ready to leave him. Doesn't know how he's going to pay the bills or make this work. He feels like a total failure because, remember, his church background means a separation and divorce. I know that for most of the population that's very normal. In the church world, when that happens, something's wrong with you is often the interpretation. It's not a kind context oftentimes for people who experience that. And so he felt like a failure. All his friends were pretty much gone. He was really alone, and he finally swallowed his pride and started typing an email back to Jim and said, I'm in trouble, can we talk? Jim, true to form, returned the call immediately, got on the phone, they started to chat. Bob told him the story about what was going on and invited him, again, true to form, to come and stay in his house in Houston, Texas for a few days, and let's talk. No pressure, no agenda, we'll just chat. You need to get out of that environment, take a breather, and let's see if we can't process some stuff together. Through a series of coaching conversations, followed by solitude and just a lot of love and grace and understanding, Bob had a life-changing experience in those 3 days. He came to wrestle not just with the pain of everything that was going on, but some of the deeper-rooted issues that had been causing a lot of this stuff. See, one of the main things that Bob had wrestled with his entire life, and people would say, not you, you wouldn't wrestle with that, and yet he did, was that he believed he was fatally flawed. That something was terribly wrong with him. And that's why he couldn't make friends, and that's why these things would fall apart, and this is why his marriage was falling apart. That somehow something was flawed at the very core of his being, and he held that as a belief. And Jim, through his masterful coaching of conversations and challenge and love and compassion, helped him unpack all of that and start a process, a road to healing and recovery. At this point in the story, I should probably pause and tell you that I've not been completely honest. And some of you that know me well know that I've not been talking about Bob at all this entire time. That's my story. It was actually 3 years ago, almost to the day today, that I was in Houston, Texas, not far from this city, getting my life back together. I came home, began a journey of working with Jim, focusing on all I could do to just move forward and launch Breakthrough Coach. Actually, I went to Canton, Ohio for training. When I was there, I wasn't sure when I got home if my wife and kids would still be in the house. That was my context during initial training. And if it wasn't for the support of a man named Jim Harrington, who loved me and supported me and talked to me and challenged me and made me think about things in a different way and reframe and all that stuff, I would not be standing here today the same individual. There's no doubt in my mind. I often say, God saved my soul, Jim saved my life. He really did. He was that person in time that came in and helped me, that literally changed the trajectory of my life. Fast forward, it's not all bad news, folks. It's okay. It's got a good ending. Fast forward 2.5 years later, or 3 years later now, Breakthrough Coach is growing. I'm excited about that. Really humbled to see the growth and excited to see this thing coming together and being able to pay it forward. I had a client recently whose wife was about to leave him, and I was able to relate and talk to him in such a way that if I hadn't experienced that, I could not have the same conversation. God is the ultimate recycler, I believe. Nothing gets wasted. So the pain that you experience, the challenges you go through, can be paid for to help somebody else. Now we're, I had my relationship with my kids. Of course, my marriage did fall apart. That was already a done deal. My relationship with my girls had really suffered because of the state of mind that I'd been in for that 2 to 3 year period. And they still loved Dad, and we weren't, but they, there were some issues there. And I'm happy to report through, again, a lot of help from Jim and focus on my kids. I have the best relationship with my kids now that I've ever had. My 17-year-old daughter talks to me about her boyfriends. I don't even have to ask. That's a pretty big deal. Those of you that have teenage kids, if they're talking to you about their boyfriends, it's a good sign. Great relationship with my kids. I reconnected with my high school sweetheart, my very first love. I got to love Facebook. Connected back with her again, and we're together now. We're going to be getting married this summer. We first were together about 25 years ago, and here we are 25 years later. Different people, but she has 2 kids, I have 3. So together we make 7. We walk into a restaurant, they have to clear a section, because there's so many of us. And we're very blessed that our kids love each other. Our family is blended really well together. I just feel really blessed that someone helped me get my life together in a time that I couldn't do it on my own. I really couldn't. And I tell you this story why, not just to end the story on some kind of emotional response or whatever the case may be. As a matter of fact, I've never told this story publicly. You're actually the first group I've ever told this story to. But in that story, there's a principle. We have the best profession in the whole world. We have the opportunity to change lives in a pretty significant way. Will we always get involved in this kind of stuff? No, I tend to get drawn into it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my past, if it's my experiences. Back in church days, and it is Sunday, so you'll have to forgive me a few biblical references, but it's a story of a man by the name of Jacob who wrestled with an angel all night long. And at the end of the night, won't let you go till you bless me, were his words. And says the angel touched him, all right, wrenched his hip, left him with a permanent limp, as a reminder that when it came down to it, he couldn't do it on his own, but that God came through. And I always say from that point forward, that story has always impacted me because I feel now that I lead out of strength because I limp. When you've gone through some things, I think one of the things that coaches don't always realize is you can get in touch with your own story. You can get in touch with the stuff that you've been through, that you've experienced, that is actually an incredible reservoir. That's a gold mine of compassion and empathy and grace and understanding and wisdom that you can coach from. It's not weakness, it's incredible strength. And oftentimes we hide from our weaknesses and we try to push them aside, like guys that won't answer an email for 4 months because they're too proud. We do this stuff. But our weaknesses actually allow us the ability to really get human and understand that on the other side of any business are human beings. Behind every business is a story. There is someone trying to build something because they want to achieve something else. There's families, and there's marriages, and there's children. There's education, there's college dreams, there's vacation dreams, there's travel dreams, there's all kinds of dreams that fuel these businesses. These businesses are created as a vehicle to help people get what they want. But we often focus just on the business and forget about the story behind it. And I feel when we do that, we make a big mistake. Because it's the story behind it that really is what matters most to that individual. And if we can get in touch with our own story and really be true to ourselves and understand where we've come from, what we've experienced, where we're broken, those things can become powerful allies in playing that bigger game of becoming masterful coaches that change the trajectory of people's lives and help them get to where they can't go on their own. I tell you, when we do that, yeah, it's a great living. They'll cut us a big check, right? Man, they're cutting you big checks. Holy cow. Want to be like Mike? It's Michael. The saying is I want to be like Mike. I had you, no offense intended. I told you earlier, I asked you the question, how many here have a few key areas of growth or where you really want to play a bigger game, or you've identified a couple, you all said, yeah, okay. I said, how many would like some principles that will guarantee that you can achieve those? Right, can I give those to you really, really quick, and then I'm going to wrap up. I'm actually going to be done a few minutes early, John. That's okay? Playing a bigger game. I've already told you this one, but get in touch with your own story. Don't Don't be ashamed of it. Don't be afraid of whatever it looks like. Because it's power for someone. It's powerful for someone else, including yourself. Don't worry about what you don't have. Go in the strength you do have. Is the second one. Start with what you've got. Another great biblical story by the man by the name of Gideon. Least in his family, least in his clan, least in his tribe, least of the tribe. This guy's like, guaranteed he's voted most likely to fail, right? God comes, gives him an assignment. He says, who me? I can't do it. And his directive was, go in the strength you have. Start with what you've got. The rest will come. Don't worry if you can't coach like a 9 or 10 right now. If you're 5, you will add tremendous value to the 2, 3s, and 4s. Right? So be the best 5 you can be. Play a big game as a 5. Right? Commit to continue to grow and to continue to improve. Go in the strength you have. Eventually you'll become a 6. And now you can be of value to the 5s. And so on and so on. Go in the strength you have. Go with what you've got. Keep investing in yourself. Don't ever stop learning. Don't ever stop growing. That's number 3. Right? Number 1 is get in touch with your story. Number 2, go in the strength you have. Number 3, never stop learning, never stop growing. Invest in yourself. I know sometimes we look at things like the Master Coach Academy classes or other things. I think it's fantastic that we don't have to go outside of our own alliance of coaches to get world-class training so that we can sharpen our saw and play a bigger game. Bring more value. Be able to impact more people in a more meaningful way because we're taking our game up a notch. I think it's fantastic that it's offered here. And that's why we got talking yesterday. I said, sign us up, our whole firm, for all 5. Because we want to make sure that we're growing. So make sure you're investing in yourself. Number 4, surround yourself with people that make you better. And here's the downside of the solo coach. This is where it can get lonely out there. Leverage this alliance. You're not alone. You may be alone in your market. Maybe not. Maybe there's other coaches, PVCA coaches, or people, professionals you can connect with. But surround yourself with great people, and they'll make you better. I know that can almost sound trite and almost sound cheesy, but it's so true. I tell my team all the time, because I have a firm, because I have a team, man, I can't get lazy at all. Like, they don't even give me I got to play my A game. And not because they make me feel bad or put that pressure on me, but it's because I want them to succeed. I want them to be great. So am I bringing my best to them so that they can achieve their best? Surround yourself with great people, and they'll call it out of you. Right? This alliance is built on sharing and learning from each other and giving and supporting. And it's one of the things that attracted me and attracts me still, the vibrant community of coaches that we have here. But let me issue. I think I've earned a bit of a reputation on the forums.
Yeah. Come on, Dave. Come on.
Never heard it.
Disturbing the peace a little. Throwing down the gauntlet. I'm going live right here at this conference, and I'm throwing down the gauntlet to every coach in this room to go home and find one of your best tools. Now, if it's intellectual property that you can't share for whatever reason, I get that. You don't have to share those. But I'm throwing down the gauntlet that you go home and you share one very meaningful tool with the rest of this alliance to make this team better. As we do that, we all grow. As we give, we grow. We don't lose anything. We don't give anything away. We're not giving a piece of ourselves away. We're giving to the greater good that makes us all rise together. So I'm throwing it down. And I'll be following up on the forums with another little disturbing post. How many will take up the challenge? Honestly, let me see. Okay? So within the next 3 days, I want to see posts that flying up on the forum. Keep Paul hopping, trying to get these up into the library. By the way, thank you so much for the work that you do, organizing all that stuff. That's a lot of work. Number 5, you can see where I'm going with this one. Get a coach. Get a coach. If you don't have a coach, what do you tell your clients? What's the benefit of coaching bring them? Get a coach. At Breakthrough Coach, we had this conversation. It wasn't something we taught as coaches, and we said, we coach each other, we have the collegial thing going on, we mentor, we co-train, we do all this stuff, right? But we talked about, we're in a team, it's easy for us to start seeing things all the same way, right? The group think thing can settle in, right? How are we getting coached to be better? So I simply shared, a story about Jim Harrington, who's a mentor, and I'm very grateful. In the last 3 or 4 months, Doug, Christy, and I started buddy coaching together, and my big brother is a big help to me, and I hope I do the same for him.
My little brother's a big help.
So I just talked to my team about that, the fact that, I felt it was important to have a coach outside of this for me. And together they rose and said, we all need coaches. And independently, they all went out and they found a coach. Whether it was a buddy coach or another professional they know and they've got a relationship and they're meeting together regularly, get a coach. It doesn't have to cost you anything except time. And the pain that you put your clients through, you'll be put through that same pain. The pain of growth and challenge and all that stuff, right? But get a coach. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this organization. John, honestly, this is a huge blessing for me. And I am feeling a little emotional. It's like 3 years, almost to the day, that I was actually the restaurant, the company I told you about that fell off the rails that I was part of? Right? Back in 2009, I ate at the same restaurant we were at the first night. I was here in Dallas, trying to fix some stuff. And I ate at that restaurant. It wasn't until I stood up, and that was a bad season of my life that I never wanted to remember. Matter of fact, it's like Dallas, does it have to be in Dallas? And I stood up to exit the restaurant, and it just hit me. I've been here before, but I'm in a different place. Thankful and due to people who invested in me and helped me along the way. We have the best profession in the world, isn't that right?
Yes.
So get out there and bring your A game.
All right.
Okay?